Sometimes, the smallest moments hold the weight of destiny. Ethan Caldwell whispered to himself as he adjusted his cufflinks under the soft glow of the chandelier. The gala floor stretched before him like a river of gold and crystal, each guest a ripple in the sea of wealth and influence. Yet his attention was captured by a single figure moving with quiet grace across the room. Nia Harper, her deep brown skin glowing against the emerald gown that caught the light with every step, was unaware of the eyes tracing her path, unaware that her life was about to entwine with his in ways neither could predict. The music swelled, a soft orchestral tune that seemed to sync with the heartbeat of the evening, and Ethan found himself drawn to the poise and dignity with which she navigated the throng, balancing elegance with humility, a presence that seemed almost impossible to ignore. He remembered the first impression that had struck him, the way her eyes reflected both resolve and a hint of curiosity, how the subtle arch of her brow suggested a mind sharp and alert. Around them, laughter and clinking glasses created a mosaic of light and sound, yet in that instant, the world seemed to narrow until it was just him observing her, just her unaware of the significance of this meeting. The scent of jasmine lingered faintly in the air, delicate and grounding. As Nia paused to glance at the display of charity auctions, her fingers brushing over the envelopes with care, not knowing that her small, purposeful actions were marking the beginning of a story that would unfold in layers of fate and fortune. Ethan stepped forward, a silent observer at first, measuring the distance between them in both space and the invisible thread of possibility that seemed to hum in the air. The lighting captured the gold in his hair and the steely gray in his eyes, the contrast of power and contemplation in his posture as he calculated every detail of the encounter without forcing it, letting the rhythm of the gala carry them closer to a collision neither had yet acknowledged. Nia's hand hovered over an invitation for a scholarship fund contribution, her pulse quickening with a mix of excitement and apprehension, as if sensing, though she could not know why, that tonight would shift the trajectory of her life. The air was thick with expectation, not of the gala itself, but of the encounter that would define the unseen currents of their futures, each moment a brushstroke on a canvas painted by chance and intention. Ethan's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, one that carried both curiosity and the hint of a plan, as he allowed the evening's orchestration to unfold, knowing that some meetings could not be rushed, that the smallest glance, the tiniest nod, the faintest recognition of presence, could echo in ways far beyond the present. Nia adjusted the strap of her gown, her emerald eyes catching the reflections of the crystal chandeliers, and for the briefest moment, their gazes met across the room, a flicker of acknowledgment that seemed to suspend the air itself. In that heartbeat, worlds shifted quietly, destinies intertwined silently, and the first thread of a story that would span surprise, challenge, and unexpected joy was set into motion, a story that neither power nor circumstance could fully predict. The evening had deepened, casting the gala in a richer hue of amber and gold, and Nia Harper moved with the same quiet grace, her thoughts drifting between the excitement of the event and the weight of what she hoped to accomplish. She paused at the edge of the main hall, her hand lightly resting on the edge of the display for the scholarship auction, and Ethan Caldwell, watching from across the room, allowed himself a moment to admire her focus, the way she balanced confidence with a subtle humility that drew attention without seeking it. The string quartet played a gentle melody that seemed to echo through the space, bouncing softly off the high ceilings and crystal chandeliers, creating an atmosphere that felt both opulent and intimate. Nia's emerald gown shimmered under the cascading lights, each fold catching a glimmer that made her presence feel almost ethereal, and yet she moved with a careful purpose, her attention fully on the task at hand, unaware of the silent observer whose gaze followed her every gesture. Ethan adjusted the cuff of his tailored suit, the fabric dark and immaculate, and took a measured step forward, allowing the music and the flow of guests to guide his approach rather than forcing any encounter, appreciating the balance of patience and anticipation. Nia's fingers hovered over an envelope that contained a bid for a life-changing scholarship, the soft texture of the paper grounding her in the moment, her pulse quickening not from fear, but from a sense of significance she could not yet name. Around them, The gala continued in its orchestrated brilliance, laughter and soft conversation forming a rich tapestry of sound. But Ethan felt as if the rest of the room had dimmed, leaving only the connection that had sparked between them moments ago. He allowed himself to note the small details. The way her hair fell in soft coils around her shoulders, the subtle shimmer of her earrings reflecting the chandelier lights, and the confident but gentle way she surveyed her surroundings. Nia glanced up at a large projection screen showing the evening's honorees, and felt a shiver of anticipation at being part of an event that had such a weight of prestige and hope attached to it. At the same time, Ethan's thoughts ran along a thread of opportunity, the awareness that destiny often arrived in forms that were quiet and understated, and that some encounters carried within them the power to shift the course of life in profound ways. As Nia turned to move toward the center of the hall, the click of her heels on the polished marble echoed softly, each step measured and deliberate, a rhythm that somehow seemed to sync with Ethan's own heartbeat, though he remained composed in appearance. He allowed a small, imperceptible smile to form, the kind that held curiosity and appreciation, as he traced the path she took, noting the grace with which she navigated the crowded room and the subtle ways her presence drew the eye without commanding it. The gala had become more than a social gathering in that instant. It had become the backdrop for a meeting charged with quiet intensity, a collision of worlds that had been moving toward each other with invisible momentum. Ethan moved a few more steps, allowing his proximity to match the rhythm of the room. Observing as Nia paused to exchange a polite word with one of the event coordinators, her voice soft but clear, carrying the weight of someone accustomed to responsibility and attention to detail. The subtle scent of her perfume, delicate and composed, seemed to linger briefly in the air as he noted the juxtaposition of her elegance with the humility of her focus, a combination that made her presence unforgettable. In that span of time, both of them were aware, though not yet consciously, that this night would be a turning point, that the choices made in these fleeting minutes would ripple outward in ways that neither could fully predict, and that a connection had been ignited that would demand recognition, understanding, and ultimately, a journey together that would intertwine their fates in ways both miraculous and transformative. The night had begun to wane, the soft glow of the chandeliers casting long, intricate shadows across the gala floor, and Nia Harper found herself momentarily pausing near a corner of the room where the light caught the delicate fabric of her gown in a dance of gold and green reflections. Her fingers traced the edge of a decorative table as she allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, the hum of the string quartet providing a soothing backdrop to the flurry of activity around her. Ethan Caldwell had moved closer without drawing attention, his posture composed, his eyes following her movements with a quiet intensity that spoke of focus and admiration rather than intrusion. The distance between them was measured yet charged, a space filled with possibility and unspoken recognition, and Ethan noted the subtle confidence in the way Nia carried herself, the slight tilt of her chin as she surveyed the room, the careful yet graceful steps she took across the marble floor. Each glance she cast toward the displays and the other guests revealed her awareness of the importance of the event, her mind balancing excitement with purpose, and Ethan could sense the depth of her presence, the intelligence and determination that had carried her to this moment. The soft murmur of conversations, punctuated by the gentle clinking of glasses, created an atmosphere that seemed to envelop them. Yet in the midst of it all, their awareness of each other grew, a silent acknowledgment that was as fleeting as it was significant. Ethan allowed himself to appreciate the details that marked her as remarkable, the glimmer of a bracelet catching the chandelier light, the subtle way her gown moved with her, the faint trace of her scent that lingered in the air as she passed by. Nia's focus never wavered, her attention on the people and causes around her, yet the fleeting sense of connection with Ethan, a presence she could not fully place, added a subtle electricity to the evening that neither of them could ignore. He made a slow, deliberate step closer as she examined a donation display, allowing the rhythm of the gala to guide his approach, each movement intentional yet understated, a dance of patience and observation. The warmth of the lighting, the richness of the decor, and the soft, harmonious music created a canvas on which the first threads of their story were weaving together, a tapestry that balanced opulence with intimacy, power with vulnerability. Nia paused to speak briefly with a staff member, her voice calm and measured, each word clear and deliberate, conveying a natural authority that seemed to come from within, and Ethan noted how effortlessly she balanced poise with approachability. The night air from a slightly open terrace door drifted in, carrying with it the faint scent of gardenias from the outdoor arrangements, blending with the warmth of the indoor lighting and creating a sensory layer that heightened the significance of the encounter. As the orchestra shifted to a softer movement, Ethan and Nia's eyes met for the briefest instant across the room, a spark of recognition that carried the weight of potential and the promise of unfolding events, a moment suspended in time that hinted at the trajectory of their entwined paths. Around them, the gala continued its orchestrated rhythm, yet the subtle tension, the silent understanding, and the unspoken curiosity between Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harper transformed the evening into something extraordinary, a space where chance, destiny, and careful observation converged to mark the first steps of a journey that would challenge, inspire, and ultimately redefine both of their lives in ways they had only begun to sense. The music shifted to a gentler, more reflective melody, and the chandeliers above Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harper cast soft patterns of light across the polished marble floors, each reflection accentuating the elegance of the evening while highlighting the subtle tension of anticipation that lingered in the air. Nia moved toward a small seating area near the terrace, her steps deliberate and graceful, her mind briefly wandering to the events of the evening, to the unexpected intensity of her connection with Ethan, and to the questions that lingered at the edge of her consciousness. She had always approached life with careful planning and measured steps, yet tonight felt like a divergence from any path she could have anticipated, a moment charged with possibility and curiosity. Ethan followed at a measured distance, allowing her space, yet ensuring he remained within the periphery of her awareness, his eyes tracing the contours of her movements and noting the quiet confidence that radiated from her presence. The soft fragrance of jasmine and citrus carried subtly through the room, mingling with the faint aroma of the polished wood and the lingering scent of evening gowns, creating a sensory layer that seemed to anchor both of them in the significance of this encounter. Nia paused, lightly resting her hand on the railing of the terrace. The view of the city beyond bathed in the warm glow of streetlights and the shimmer of distant skyscrapers, a landscape both familiar and distant, mirroring the unfamiliar excitement she felt within. Ethan took another step forward, his posture relaxed yet purposeful, the tailored lines of his suit emphasizing both his confidence and the care he took in maintaining composure, each movement intentional and measured, designed to align with the subtle rhythm of the evening. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment across the space, a quiet acknowledgment, and in that instant, the surrounding conversations and laughter seemed to fade, leaving only the unspoken understanding that something significant had begun to unfold. Nia's attention returned to the charity tables, her fingers lightly brushing over the envelopes and catalogs, a combination of focus and subtle determination, while Ethan observed the way she engaged with the environment, the careful attention to detail, and the poise with which she balanced curiosity and purpose. The warmth of the lighting accentuated the depth of her features, the glow of the emerald fabric, and the way her hair fell in gentle waves across her shoulders, creating a moment that seemed suspended in time, poised between the reality of the gala and the quiet magic of connection. Ethan allowed himself a small, approving nod, acknowledging both her presence and the promise of the encounter, his thoughts aligning with the notion that some meetings carried an innate gravity that transcended the ordinary. The orchestra's melody softened further, creating an intimate cadence that matched the rhythm of their movements and the subtle tension of anticipation, while Nia adjusted her posture slightly, her gaze momentarily flickering to the distant cityscape, a quiet reflection on possibilities and choices yet to be made. As she turned to move toward the center of the hall again, the light caught the gentle shimmer of her gown, and Ethan's awareness of every nuance in her movement deepened, a combination of admiration, intrigue, and a desire to understand the story that she carried silently with her. The evening continued in its orchestrated elegance, yet the undercurrent of connection, observation, An unspoken curiosity between them wove a thread of intimacy and significance through the ambient glow and the measured cadence of conversation, creating a tableau in which both Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harper existed not only within the gala, but within a shared moment that seemed poised to define the trajectory of their unfolding story. The soft golden light from the chandeliers seemed to wrap the entire hall in warmth, and Nia Harper felt a quiet steadiness settle over her as she moved with careful attention through the clusters of guests. Her emerald gown flowed around her like liquid silk, catching reflections from every crystal and polished surface, yet she remained focused on the displays and conversations that could make a real difference for the causes she cared about. Ethan Caldwell observed her from a few steps away, allowing the distance to preserve the subtle tension and anticipation that hung in the air, his presence a quiet anchor to the momentum of the evening. The notes of the string quartet shifted gently, a slow, melodic cadence that seemed to echo the rhythm of their unspoken dialogue, and the soft murmur of voices around them created a dynamic background against which every glance and movement between them gained significance. Nia paused briefly by a donation table, her fingers tracing the edge of a decorative envelope, and Ethan noticed the slight lift of her chin, the focus in her gaze, the way she balanced confidence with attentiveness in every gesture. He moved slowly, deliberately, aligning his steps with the natural flow of the room, noting the subtle play of light across her features and the quiet command she carried in her posture and mannerisms. The city lights outside the terrace windows glimmered faintly, reflecting in the polished marble floors and casting a warm glow that added depth to the textures of gowns and suits, crystal and gold. And in that ambient glow Ethan felt the weight of potential, the sense that this encounter was more than chance. Nia turned to exchange a few words with a guest she had been introduced to earlier, her voice soft yet articulate, and Ethan observed the ease with which she navigated social interactions, the balance of humility and intelligence that made her presence both engaging and commanding. The air carried a faint trace of her fragrance, subtle and composed, and it mingled with the delicate scent of roses from the floral arrangements, creating a sensory layer that seemed to heighten the awareness of every moment between them. As Nia moved again through the hall, her path bringing her closer to the center of the room, Ethan allowed himself a closer step, careful not to intrude but to maintain the thread of proximity that had begun to form. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgment passing between them, a spark that carried the promise of curiosity, understanding, and connection without a word being spoken. The gentle hum of the gala, punctuated by laughter and the soft clinking of glasses, framed the stillness of that moment, a contrast that made the interaction feel both intimate and expansive at the same time. Nia's attention remained partly on her surroundings and partly on the subtle pull of awareness she felt toward Ethan, a sensation that was both surprising and compelling, and Ethan noted the thoughtful precision in her movements, the way she measured her steps and gestures, each one purposeful yet elegant. In the delicate balance of attention and observation, the night seemed to stretch and hold its breath, the soft music and glimmering light creating a stage for a narrative that neither could yet fully define, a story unfolding in layers of anticipation, reflection, and quiet significance. Each moment, every glance and subtle gesture, added to the unfolding tapestry, marking the beginning of a connection that would grow in depth, complexity, and emotional resonance as the evening carried on, shaping the contours of the journey that awaited both Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harper. The evening air had grown cooler as the gala progressed, and the soft glow of the chandeliers cast elongated reflections across the polished marble floors, each glimmer capturing the intricate details of the guests' attire and the subtle elegance of the room. Nia Harper moved with composed purpose toward a quiet corner where a collection of framed photographs and awards was displayed, her emerald gown catching the light with every step, revealing a cascade of rich hues that complemented her confident yet thoughtful demeanor. Ethan Caldwell remained nearby, maintaining just enough distance to observe without imposing, his tailored suit a study in understated precision, the faint gleam of his cufflinks catching the light as he adjusted his posture, his gaze fixed on her with a blend of admiration and quiet calculation. The string quartet had shifted to a softer, more reflective arrangement, and the gentle music seemed to synchronize with the measured rhythm of their movements, creating an atmosphere both intimate and expansive, where the smallest gestures took on profound significance. Nia paused to study one of the displays, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of the frame as she absorbed the stories captured within, and Ethan noticed the subtle arch of her brow, the way her eyes reflected both curiosity and contemplation, and the quiet strength that she carried in her posture. Around them, the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses created a backdrop that highlighted the stillness between them, a silent dialogue carried in glances, body language, and the unspoken awareness of each other's presence. The soft scent of her perfume mingled with the faint fragrance of the floral arrangements nearby, creating a sensory impression that lingered just long enough for Ethan to notice, adding another layer of depth to his observation. He took a deliberate step closer, careful to match the flow of the crowd and the rhythm of the evening, noting the elegance with which she navigated the space, the way she maintained poise while engaging briefly with other guests, and the unassuming authority in her demeanor. Nia's eyes lifted toward the terrace, where the city lights shimmered like a distant constellation, and for a moment she seemed to pause not only to take in the view, but to reflect inwardly, a quiet moment of contemplation that made her presence feel even more compelling. Ethan allowed himself a subtle smile, acknowledging both the grace with which she carried herself and the quiet pull that seemed to draw him closer with every measured movement. The orchestra's melody deepened, a rich layering of strings and piano that enhanced the ambience and lent a cinematic quality to the unfolding scene, as if the music itself were tracking the invisible tension and mutual awareness between them. Nia adjusted the drape of her gown, her movements fluid and deliberate, and Ethan observed how her focus shifted between the people around her and the deeper attention she seemed to reserve for the nuances of the evening, the small decisions and interactions that revealed character and intention. The interplay of light, sound, and presence created a tableau in which every subtle glance, every minor shift of weight, and every fleeting expression contributed to an atmosphere charged with quiet anticipation and unspoken significance. In that suspended moment, the gala became more than a social event. It became a stage on which the first elements of a profound and life-altering connection were quietly unfolding, a meeting of minds and intentions that neither Nia Harper nor Ethan Caldwell could yet fully articulate, but both felt in the careful measurement of glances, steps, and the rhythm of the evening itself. The night had deepened further, and the soft hum of conversation in the gala hall seemed to recede into the background as Nia Harper moved with deliberate grace toward the center of the room, her focus balancing between the elegance of the event and the quiet pull she felt from Ethan Caldwell's presence nearby. The amber glow of the chandeliers reflected in the polished marble floors, highlighting the subtle shimmer of her emerald gown and the gentle sway of the fabric as she walked, each step measured and purposeful. Ethan allowed her space while following the rhythm of her movements, his eyes tracing the quiet confidence in her posture, the way she carried herself with dignity and poise that drew attention without seeking it, and the gentle determination in her gaze that suggested a mind both curious and resolute. The orchestra shifted to a softer, more intimate movement, and the notes seemed to mirror the slow, deliberate unfolding of the evening, each chord and melodic line blending seamlessly with the ambient glow of the lights, enhancing the sense of anticipation and possibility that hung in the air. Nia paused near a floral arrangement, her fingers lightly touching the petals as she allowed herself a brief reflection on the evening, the causes she supported, and the subtle yet undeniable connection she felt, a pull she could not yet name, toward the man whose presence had become a quiet, steadying influence. Ethan stepped closer, matching his pace to the flow of the crowd, careful not to impose, but wanting to maintain the invisible thread that had begun to tie them together, noting the elegance in her gestures, the thoughtful precision in her interactions, and the small but telling expressions that revealed both depth and intelligence. The city skyline, glimpsed through the terrace windows, twinkled in the distance, the lights casting soft reflections that mingled with the glow of the interior, creating an atmosphere both expansive and intimate, a space where chance, observation, and subtle intention intertwined. Nia's gaze lifted toward the city briefly, taking in the lights and the distant hum of life, and Ethan watched as she absorbed the scene, noting the way her attention seemed to flicker between the world around her and the quiet, unspoken awareness of his presence. A soft scent of gardenia drifted through the air, mingling with her subtle perfume, creating a sensory layer that seemed to mark the significance of the evening, a gentle but persistent reminder of the shared space between them. Nia adjusted her posture, her movements fluid and composed, and Ethan appreciated the careful balance she maintained between focus and presence, between humility and subtle command, each gesture echoing the quiet strength that had captured his attention from the beginning. The soft cadence of the music, the glimmer of the chandeliers, and the gentle murmur of voices created a rhythm in which every step, glance, and fleeting expression carried meaning, a symphony of subtle communication that required no words yet conveyed intention and awareness. As Nia moved to engage with a small group of guests nearby, Ethan's gaze followed, noting the precise way she measured her interactions, the calm intelligence in her demeanor, and the effortless grace with which she balanced social attentiveness and personal reflection. The evening, in its orchestrated elegance, had transformed into a stage for subtle discovery, observation, and the unfolding of potential, a space where both Nia Harper and Ethan Caldwell were acutely aware of each other without the need for conversation, their silent exchange creating the first tangible threads of a story that promised complexity, depth, and the quiet unfolding of destiny. The gala had reached its quiet crescendo, and Nia Harper found herself momentarily standing apart, her gaze drawn to the interplay of shadows and golden light dancing across the polished marble floors. The hum of conversation softened at the edges, blending with the gentle strains of the string quartet, creating a rhythm that seemed to echo the careful cadence of her own thoughts. Ethan Caldwell remained nearby, his stance relaxed yet attentive, the tailored lines of his suit catching subtle highlights from the chandeliers above, and he observed her with a measured intensity that spoke of curiosity, admiration, and the recognition of an unfolding significance he could not yet define. Nia's fingers traced the edge of a decorative frame at a nearby display, her movements deliberate, her eyes reflecting both contemplation and the quiet awareness of her surroundings, and Ethan noted the grace with which she navigated the space, the combination of humility and poise that marked her as someone accustomed to carrying herself with dignity. The city lights visible through the terrace windows shimmered faintly against the soft night sky, their reflection in the polished marble adding depth to the room, and for a moment, the gala seemed suspended in a perfect balance of elegance and anticipation. Nia paused, her gaze sweeping across the room to absorb the faces, the subtle interactions, and the patterns of light and movement, and Ethan allowed himself a slow, deliberate step closer, ensuring his presence remained within the periphery of her awareness, a silent acknowledgment without intrusion. The music shifted gently, the softer passages underscoring the ambient conversation, creating a cadence that mirrored the understated tension between them, the quiet curiosity that hung in the air, and the unspoken acknowledgment that something significant was taking shape. Nia's posture remained poised, yet there was a subtle shift in her focus, an awareness of the man nearby that she could not ignore, a feeling that threads of destiny had begun to weave around them without the need for words. Ethan observed the small, intricate gestures, the tilt of her head, the way her hand rested lightly on the frame, the measured movements of her steps, and allowed himself to appreciate the nuances that made her presence both commanding and quietly approachable. The floral arrangements near the terrace added a delicate fragrance to the air, mingling with the soft scent of her perfume, and together they created an invisible thread connecting the space around them to the shared awareness building between them. As Nia moved toward another section of the display, her eyes catching the soft glimmer of light on the glass and gold details, Ethan followed with subtle steps, maintaining the rhythm of observation and silent proximity, noting how each careful movement conveyed grace, intelligence, and quiet confidence. The room, alive with refined activity and gentle conversations, became a stage on which the interplay of attention, curiosity, and the unspoken narrative between them took shape, a tableau where every glance, step, and subtle gesture contributed to the emergence of a connection that neither had fully articulated but both felt in the growing awareness that this evening was the beginning of something meaningful and transformative. In that suspended moment, Nia Harper and Ethan Caldwell existed within the elegance of the gala and the invisible gravity of their unspoken recognition, setting into motion the trajectory of a story that promised depth, resonance, and the slow unfolding of shared destiny. The soft golden light of the chandeliers bathed the gala hall in warmth as Nia Harper moved gracefully through the crowd, her emerald gown reflecting faint glimmers that danced across the polished marble floors. She paused near a quiet corner where a series of charitable displays were arranged, her fingers lightly tracing the edges of an informational booklet, absorbing the significance of each cause while maintaining the calm composure that had drawn Ethan Caldwell's attention from the beginning. He observed her from a measured distance, noting the precision of her movements, the subtle strength in her posture, and the way she balanced poise with quiet attentiveness to her surroundings. The string quartet had shifted to a tender, contemplative piece, and the gentle cadence of the music seemed to mirror the rhythm of their interaction, each note accentuating the anticipation that lingered in the air. Nia's gaze lifted briefly to the terrace, where the city lights shimmered against the night sky, and for a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of the evening, the sense that something significant was unfolding without the need for conversation or overt gesture. Ethan stepped a deliberate pace closer, careful to match the natural flow of the room, allowing the subtle connection to deepen without forcing it, appreciating the way the light caught the contours of her features and the soft movement of her hair across her shoulders. The murmur of guests, the clinking of glasses, and the faint fragrance of floral arrangements blended seamlessly with the delicate notes of her perfume, creating a sensory backdrop that heightened the tension and significance of their proximity. Nia adjusted her posture, her movements fluid and deliberate, and Ethan allowed himself to notice the nuanced expressions that revealed curiosity, intelligence, and an openness to engagement that she did not yet fully understand in him. The interplay of shadows and illumination on the marble floors mirrored the interplay of awareness and anticipation between them, subtle and unspoken, yet powerful in its quiet resonance. As Nia approached another table to examine a display, Ethan followed with equal care, maintaining a rhythm that allowed their awareness of each other to grow, an unspoken dialogue conducted through glances, posture, and measured steps. The orchestra's melody softened further, creating a gentle cadence that seemed to slow the very air around them, drawing attention to the significance of each small motion, each flicker of expression, and the unfolding narrative that connected their experiences in the room. Nia's eyes lingered on the items before her, yet there was a quiet pull toward the awareness of Ethan's presence, a subtle acknowledgment that both recognized but neither yet named. The combination of light, music, scent, and silent interaction formed a tableau in which every glance, step, and shift of focus contributed to a narrative both intimate and expansive, charged with the promise of discovery and the slow unfolding of a connection that would carry beyond the walls of the gala. In that suspended moment, the elegance of the evening, the refinement of the setting, and the careful attention each gave to their surroundings and to one another created the sense that destiny had quietly begun to thread their paths together, laying the groundwork for a journey marked by significance, awareness, and the gentle, inexorable pull of shared experience. The gala had begun its gentle winding down, the soft hum of conversation blending seamlessly with the final notes of the string quartet as Nia Harper moved deliberately toward a quieter section of the hall, her emerald gown flowing elegantly with each measured step. Her eyes traced the intricate displays of photographs and awards, taking in the stories of achievement and philanthropy while maintaining a composed awareness of the space around her, and Ethan Caldwell remained just beyond her periphery, observing with a steady intensity that spoke of attentiveness and restrained admiration. The warm glow from the chandeliers cast a soft radiance across the polished marble floors, reflecting subtly in the folds of her gown and highlighting the graceful sway of her movements as she paused briefly to consider a particularly detailed display, her fingers brushing lightly over the frame with thoughtful care. Ethan allowed himself a small, deliberate step closer, conscious of maintaining the rhythm of his approach and the space between them, letting the subtle tension of proximity build naturally without intrusion. The orchestra had transitioned to a soft, lingering melody, the delicate notes wrapping the room in an atmosphere that felt intimate and expansive at once, mirroring the careful interplay of awareness and curiosity between them. Nia's posture remained poised, her gaze attentive yet subtly drawn toward the man whose presence she had begun to sense in the corners of her awareness, a quiet acknowledgment that neither spoke of aloud, but that both felt with clarity. The delicate scent of floral arrangements mingled with the subtle trace of her perfume, adding a sensory layer that seemed to heighten the awareness of the evening, grounding the quiet significance of each glance, step, and gesture. As she moved slightly toward the terrace to observe the city lights beyond the windows, Ethan mirrored the direction, keeping pace without breaking the rhythm of her movements, the polished lines of his suit and the gleam of his cufflinks catching the soft light in a way that accentuated his composed presence. The distant glow of skyscrapers shimmered through the windows, their reflections playing across the marble in intricate patterns that mirrored the subtle interaction unfolding between them, each movement, glance, and adjustment creating a cadence of connection that required no words. Nia's attention shifted between the displays, the guests, and the quiet pull of awareness she felt toward Ethan, her posture and measured steps conveying confidence and composure even as the undercurrent of curiosity and intrigue guided her through the hall. Ethan observed with quiet appreciation, noting the details of her poise, the precision in her gestures, and the reflective intelligence in her expressions, all of which combined to create an aura of understated elegance and strength. The interplay of light, music, and presence formed a delicate tableau in which every subtle expression, step, and movement contributed to the building narrative, a story of recognition, anticipation, and the gradual weaving of two lives toward an emerging significance. In that suspended moment, the gala transformed into a stage not merely for social gathering, but for the quiet establishment of awareness and connection, a setting in which Nia Harper and Ethan Caldwell existed simultaneously within the space, and the unfolding trajectory of a story marked by depth, reflection, and the quiet gravity of destiny. The gala had begun to reach its final hours, and a hushed sense of reflection settled over the room as Nia Harper moved toward the terrace, her emerald gown catching the subtle glimmers of light from the remaining chandeliers, each shimmer tracing the contours of her movements with an elegance that spoke of careful poise and quiet confidence. Ethan Caldwell followed at a measured pace, his eyes capturing each nuanced gesture, the soft curve of her shoulders, the way her fingers rested lightly on the railing, and the gentle tilt of her head as she surveyed the city skyline beyond. The distant lights of Manhattan twinkled like scattered stars, casting reflective patterns across the marble floors that seemed to mirror the intricate layers of unspoken understanding building between them. Nia inhaled softly, the cool air from the terrace brushing against her skin, carrying with it the faint scent of flowers from nearby arrangements and the quiet murmur of voices from the remaining guests, creating a sensory depth that anchored the significance of the moment. Ethan allowed a subtle, deliberate step closer, preserving the rhythm of the evening while maintaining enough distance to respect the quiet gravity of her focus, observing the strength and poise in every measured movement, the subtle intelligence in her gaze, and the way she carried herself as both participant and observer of the gala. The orchestra had faded into a soft cadence of strings, the lingering harmonies weaving seamlessly with the gentle ambient sounds, and the atmosphere held a delicate tension that neither sought to disrupt, a shared recognition of the weight of the encounter they were experiencing together. Nia's eyes traced the horizon, taking in the reflections of lights in the river below, and for the briefest instant, a contemplative smile touched her lips, the kind of quiet acknowledgment that seemed to speak both to the grandeur of the evening and the significance of the connection she felt stirring with Ethan. He noted the subtle shifts in her posture, the way her shoulders relaxed ever so slightly, the gentle lift of her chin, and the way her presence seemed to anchor the surrounding energy, drawing attention without demanding it, commanding admiration through quiet elegance. The interplay of light, shadow, and reflection across the terrace created a visual harmony that seemed to echo the unspoken dialogue forming between them, each glance, subtle gesture, and movement carrying layers of meaning and anticipation. Nia moved a step closer to the balustrade, her fingers lightly tracing the carved patterns, and Ethan adjusted his stance, aligning himself so that their proximity felt natural, measured, and deliberate, the unspoken rhythm of presence and observation deepening in quiet resonance. The city skyline beyond shimmered with faint movement, the distant sounds of traffic and urban life providing a gentle counterpoint to the intimate stillness shared between them, and the subtle blending of external and internal awareness heightened the significance of every moment. Nia's gaze flicked briefly toward Ethan, a delicate spark of acknowledgment passing between them, a recognition of presence, intention, and curiosity that carried a weight beyond the immediate context of the gala. Ethan allowed himself the smallest of nods, a silent affirmation that he shared her recognition, and in that instant, the space between them felt charged with potential, the beginnings of a narrative shaped by awareness, connection, and the quiet unfolding of an encounter that promised depth, discovery, and a meaningful journey yet to come. The final hours of the gala carried a quiet, almost reverent energy as Nia Harper lingered near the terrace, the city lights beyond casting a reflective glow across the marble floors and illuminating the emerald fabric of her gown with a soft, golden radiance. Ethan Caldwell remained nearby, his presence calm yet attentive, observing her with a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and a quiet sense of connection that had grown steadily throughout the evening. The gentle strains of the string quartet filled the space, their melody delicate and lingering, echoing the subtle rhythm of anticipation and discovery that hung between them. Nia adjusted her posture slightly, the graceful sweep of her movements revealing a composed confidence as she surveyed the quiet corners of the hall, her eyes flicking briefly to the framed photographs and awards that documented the evening's charitable achievements. Ethan took a measured step closer, careful to maintain the balance of proximity and respect, appreciating the way light fell across her features, highlighting the depth of expression in her eyes and the quiet determination in her gestures. The scent of fresh florals mingled with the soft trace of her perfume, creating an ambient layer that seemed to underscore the significance of the moment, a sensory reminder of presence and awareness. Nia's attention shifted between the cityscape beyond the terrace and the subtle details of the gala around her, the reflections of lights on the polished surfaces forming intricate patterns that mirrored the growing awareness and unspoken acknowledgment between them. Ethan observed the slight lift of her chin, the calm steadiness in her stance, and the way she navigated the space with measured poise, each gesture and movement conveying a blend of humility and strength that drew his focus. The soft hum of conversation, punctuated by the gentle clinking of glasses, provided a background texture that framed the intimacy of the unspoken connection forming between them, a silent dialogue carried through glances, posture, and the cadence of steps. Nia's gaze lingered briefly on Ethan, a flicker of recognition passing between them, subtle yet profound, and the small acknowledgment created a shift in the atmosphere, a sense of anticipation that neither of them fully articulated but both felt. Ethan allowed himself a small nod, a silent affirmation of mutual awareness, and in that shared understanding, the space between them seemed to narrow without words, their attention anchored in the quiet gravity of the encounter. The city lights beyond reflected softly on the marble, creating an interplay of shadow and illumination that seemed to mirror the delicate balance of observation, curiosity, and connection forming in real time. Nia took a slow, deliberate breath, her movements fluid as she adjusted her gown, her eyes meeting Ethan's once more with an unspoken acknowledgment that spoke of respect, curiosity, and the quiet thrill of new possibility. The soft music, the subtle warmth of the chandeliers, and the gentle hum of the gala combined to form a sensory tableau in which every glance, step, and gesture carried significance, creating the sense that the evening had become more than a social event. It was a stage for the beginnings of understanding, recognition, and the promise of a meaningful journey unfolding between Nia Harper and Ethan Caldwell. In that suspended, luminous moment, the air itself seemed to hold its breath, the city beyond and the gala within framing the delicate, emerging connection that would guide the next steps of both their lives, a quiet prelude to discovery, trust, and the unfolding of shared destiny. The gala had quieted to a gentle murmur as the evening drew to a close, and Harper lingered near the terrace, her eyes reflecting the shimmering city lights beyond, the soft golden glow from the chandeliers illuminating her gown with a warmth that seemed to mirror the significance of the night. Caldwell approached with measured steps, his presence calm, yet purposeful, and as he reached her side, the subtle acknowledgment in their shared gaze spoke volumes beyond words, a recognition of the journey that had unfolded between them. The faint strains of the string quartet provided a delicate backdrop, their final notes lingering like a whispered promise, complementing the nuanced rhythm of attention, observation, and unspoken understanding that had developed throughout the evening. Nia's posture remained poised, her hands lightly resting on the terrace railing as she surveyed the skyline, the interplay of light and shadow reflecting in her thoughtful expression, and Ethan observed with quiet appreciation, noting the depth, intelligence, and subtle grace that defined her presence. Around them, the remaining guests moved with subdued energy, conversations soft and respectful, the atmosphere no longer bustling but intimate, lending space for reflection, recognition, and the resonance of the connection that had been quietly building. Ethan took a deliberate step closer, careful to preserve the balance of distance and attention, and in that movement, the awareness between them deepened, a silent understanding that transcended the immediate context of the gala. Nia's gaze lifted briefly to meet his, a flicker of acknowledgment passing between them, subtle yet profound, signaling the awareness of shared experience, curiosity, and the quiet beginnings of trust and recognition. The gentle scent of flowers from nearby arrangements mingled with the soft trace of her perfume, enhancing the sensory richness of the moment and anchoring the significance of every subtle gesture and glance. The city skyline beyond shimmered in the distance, a constellation of lights reflecting softly on the terrace glass, and in the quiet interplay of illumination and shadow, every step, every motion, every measured breath carried meaning, contributing to the subtle choreography of attention and presence that had defined the evening. Nia shifted slightly, her movements fluid and deliberate, and Ethan observed the ease with which she navigated the space, balancing reflection and awareness, composure and anticipation, each detail forming a rhythm that spoke of intention and subtle resonance. The ambient notes of the music, the soft glow of the lights, and the understated elegance of the remaining surroundings framed their interaction, lending weight to every silent acknowledgment and quiet gesture, forming a tapestry of connection that required no words yet conveyed depth, significance, and the promise of continued understanding. As Nia turned slightly toward the remaining guests, her attention momentarily on the soft hum of conversation, Ethan maintained his position, a silent witness to the poise, intelligence, and subtle strength she embodied, allowing the unspoken narrative to continue unfolding. In that luminous, suspended moment, the gala had transformed from a social event into a stage where awareness, recognition, and the delicate interplay of presence had created a tableau of quiet significance, a place in which Harper and Ethan Caldwell existed together in shared understanding, setting the stage for the unfolding of a journey defined by destiny, reflection, and the promise of new beginnings.